New information on the 17-year-old charged in connection to Baltimore's mass shooting. The additional charges he's now facing. Plus, major city agencies under fire.
Should Monzi be getting the level of funding that it is?
I think that money should be held to a halt.
We take that question directly to the mayor as council members push for accountability. Then the city's housing department claims they had no knowledge of the Brooklyn Day event before the deadly gunfire erupted. We question how it flew under the radar until it was too late. Police say an accused murderer kills another man, then casually returns to work. Our team presses his employer on how he passed a background check.
Tracking rain and storms into the weekend. I'm timing it out hour by hour.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Maxine Stryker.
I'm Kai Jackson. Frustration at City Hall downtown after last night's hearing left several unanswered questions about the Brooklyn mass shooting.
More on that in a moment. We begin with new information on the 17-year-old facing weapons charges. He is now facing riot-related charges after this video showed him appearing to pull a gun out of a backpack on the night of the shooting. Fox 45 News spoke to the teen's attorney about the new charges. He says the state doesn't have enough evidence for a conviction.
This is what the state, I guess, intends to use as a basis for criminalizing my claim. We will see what the state is going to do. We maintain the same position. This young man is not guilty of any crime, let alone crime of riot. And it is on the state to bear the burden beyond a reasonable doubt of proving that this young man contributed to, participated in, or had anything to do with riot or any of the other charges that they brought against him.
Jeremy Eldridge is a defense attorney not connected to this case and says prosecutors will have to prove the teen was in a group and did something to spark a riot. Earlier this week, Fox 45 News obtained documents outlining the weapons charges against that teen. In the documents, Baltimore police say the teen pulled out what appears to be a gun from his backpack, which they say triggered other shootings. The defense maintains the gun in question is a toy.
You have an allegation that a young man pulled out an assault rifle and fired into a crowd, causing everyone else in a chain reaction to involve themselves in a riot. And this young man is now facing life as a result of those actions. The question will be, is there sufficient evidence to prove it in court?
Well, the teen's attorney filed a motion to move that case to the juvenile system. So far, a hearing has not been scheduled.
And his arrest, the only one made. No one has been arrested in connection to the shooting itself. Fox 45 News is demanding answers about the failures from multiple city agencies in identifying a threat before the Brooklyn shooting. We're following some new developments regarding who threw that block party on July 2nd and why it flew under the housing department's radar despite years of the event happening in the past. Baltimore police admitting wrongdoing in the hours leading up to the shooting, but they left the city council unsatisfied with the response at last night's hearing.
And that's what we're trying to figure out with our after action. Why didn't we find out ahead of time? Why didn't we solicit members of the community to tell us when it was?
Although I appreciate the honesty and straightforwardness that we've gotten in some instances, we haven't gotten very many answers.
Well, Jeff Abel and Rebecca Pryor will have more from BPD and housing in a few moments. Our team coverage begins, though, with Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost, continuing to press city leaders about an apparent lack of transparency surrounding the mayor's office of neighborhood safety and engagement.
We're learning the mediations completed by Safe Streets workers the night of the mass shooting have yet to be revealed by Monzi's staff. And really, a lot of the questions from the council members all come back to transparency and accountability, very similar to the questions that we've been asking the city about Safe Streets for nearly 2 years. Now the council demanding to know what's going on. After hours of being in the hot seat
from Monday, July 3rd,
the interim director of the mayor's office of neighborhood safety and engagement leaving council members with more questions than answers Thursday, especially when it comes to why Safe Streets workers did not alert anyone that the Brooklyn Day block party was happening when they were there Saturday evening.
A lot of concerns that they couldn't answer basic questions, that they haven't reviewed the after-action reports of the 5 incidents that occurred that day. This is an agency that we're giving $20+ million to and has 40+ employees. Work should have been done.
No, they're getting over $20 million. Like, we have to have some transparency. We've been asking for that information for a very, very long time.
Councilman Antonio Glover going a step further than any elected leader has so far. Should Monzi be getting the level of funding that it is?
Right now, I think that until we start to see transparency in data, I think that money should be held to a halt.
Friday, we questioned Mayor Brandon Scott about the council's concerns. One councilman called for the funding for Monzi to be paused until there's more transparency and more answers about how the organization operates. How do you respond to that? And do you believe that Monzi bears some responsibility or is complicit in what happened a week and a half ago, given the fact that Safe Streets workers...
We're going to say this and say this again. The only people responsible for what happened in Brooklyn are those who pulled the trigger. Monzi's funding is not going to be stopped because we know they're out here saving lives each and every day.
While the mayor defends the flagship gun violence prevention program in his administration, the questions continue, especially when talking about the mediations central to Safe Streets' response to the block party Saturday. Those mediations were not recorded the night in the Safe Streets internal software system.
Has anybody in Monzi then in your agency reviewed those 5 incidents before?
No, we have not reviewed those. They've been put in.
We don't know if they are also the same, if they're connected to this event, or whether or not they're also people of interest in this event.
I can't say if that's true or false.
We pressed the mayor about those transparency and accountability concerns, too. Will you direct your mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement to comply with the questions and provide the information that the council asked for?
I don't know what the questions are. Anyone that thinks that we're going to talk about an open investigation where someone could potentially be a witness in Baltimore, the city that we've seen witnesses killed, that's very irresponsible of anybody to do. We're not going to do that. Period.
But that's not what the council is asking for.
I'm not asking who the conflicts are between. I'm not asking who mediated the conflicts. I'm not asking any specific information like that.
What we have seen is that they weren't ready for this.
David Williams, president of the Taxpayers Protection Alliance, agrees with Councilman Glover about pausing Monzi funding until more details are provided, saying the city deserves to know how their tax dollars are being spent.
Taxpayers want to know, but most importantly, the citizens of Baltimore want to know, is that if you're going to be spending tens of millions of dollars on programs to interrupt violence, is it working? Do they have a plan in place?
But right now, the funding isn't stopping, and the questions aren't being answered. I asked Monzi how the Safe Streets workers found out about the Brooklyn Day block party, especially since no one else inside City Hall knew that it was taking place. Again, Monzi ignoring that question. In the newsroom, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
We just heard from Councilman Yitzi Schleifer pressing Monzi about those mediations. He joined us on Fox 45 News at 4 o'clock today to discuss a potential pause in funding for Safe Streets.
Look, I'm all for spending money where it works and not spending money where it's not working. And right now, we don't have even a clear metric on how to measure whether or not it's working or not. And so certainly Monzi needs to come forth and explain what their process is and how they can measure whether or not they're succeeding or not before they should be getting future money.
Councilman Schleifer. And this brings us to our question of the day. Do you believe Monzi's funding should be frozen? So far, 97% of people who voted say yes. You can vote right now at foxbaltimore.com/vote. Fox 45 News is learning more about this U-Haul truck seen in Brooklyn on the morning after the shooting. It's prompting new questions about how the housing department wasn't aware of the Brooklyn Day event. Jeff Abel has been investigating. He joins us live with his new findings. Jeff?
Well, we now know that organizers had no permit to throw this party and no public funds to pay for it. And we're also learning a lot more tonight about the man who helped ensure this party would go on. At Brooklyn Homes, the cleanup from the city's largest mass shooting is still on, and the anger is still out.
To the Housing Authority, you completely missed the mark.
Online videos show just how large the Brooklyn Day block party had become, consuming a large portion of the 35-acre housing project and drawing hundreds of people. But this year, after the party ended with 2 dead and 28 injured, officials with the city's housing authority told city council members they knew nothing about it.
One of the things that we continue to ask ourselves, should we have known? The thing about this particular Brooklyn Day is that it never happened on the same day every year. Sometimes it's in June, sometimes it is in July, and sometimes it's in August. We're in the process of updating the policies.
The city's housing director told council members at a hearing Thursday night that no one working at Brooklyn Homes sounded the alarm about the party.
We have protocols in place where they are supposed to let our main office know exactly what is going on.
But Fox 45 is questioning how
Harrison, he stepped down. Now we're learning more about that transfer of power. In an interview with another news outlet, Harrison and Scott revealed Worley found out he was chosen as police commissioner less than 12 hours before that announcement was made. In the wake of the shooting, Fox 45 News asked Mayor Scott about his confidence in Worley.
Has it swayed your confidence in Worley as the next commissioner for Baltimore?
No.
It's important to note that Harrison is still on the payroll, and it's not clear when confirmation hearings for Worley will begin. There are also questions about Worley's residency. The city charter requires the police commissioner to live in the city and be a registered voter in Baltimore. During last night's hearing, Worley said he is planning to move to Baltimore, but currently lives in Anne Arundel County.
Fox 45 News continues to demand answers and accountability following the Brooklyn mass shooting. You can follow our reporting by downloading the WBFF app and by going to foxbaltimore.com.
We had rain and storms move across the state a few hours ago, but now we're mostly dry. The heaviest of rain is to our south. We'll stay nice and dry overnight. But tomorrow, we have our next round of showers and storms as we continue to deal with an unsettled pattern. We are looking at more rain on Sunday and then once again on Monday as we deal with that unsettled pattern. Also, we've got hot and humid weather on the way this weekend. I'll break down the timing of the rain and just how hot it gets coming up in my full forecast. Back to you.
All right, Jasmine, thank you. Coming up on Fox 45 News at 10 o'clock, Mayor Brandon Scott continues and says he's expecting to be a father on his Instagram page. The conflict of interest concerns around who's having his child. Vice President Kamala Harris at Coppin State University this afternoon. Her message to Marylanders and the country as she pushes sustainability. And coming up at 10:30 tonight, we're learning the accused killer in a deadly Towson shooting in February was an employee at a restaurant nearby. Fox 45 News looks into surveillance video and why his escape wasn't caught on camera.
Baltimore boxer Gervonta Davis has been released from jail. It comes 6 weeks after a judge revoked his home detention in a 2020 hit and run. Earlier this year, Davis was ordered to serve the detention at his longtime coach's home in Baltimore. But the court found out he was staying at a Four Seasons hotel. His new attorney had been fighting to modify the sentence.
Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott has a baby on the way. The mayor made that announcement on social media.
And we're also learning the woman carrying the baby recently got a $25,000 grant from the city. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost presses City Hall on a potential conflict of interest.
Thank you.
Mayor Brandon Scott making the first public statement about his big announcement.
My first child, baby Charm, will be joining us this winter. Thank you.
A baby on the way with Hannah Pugh, operations director for Be More Empowered. The group says it provides programming for Black girls and women in Baltimore.
Good morning. The December 14th, 2022 meeting of the Board of Estimates is now called to order.
In December, Be More Empowered got a $25,000 chunk of Baltimore's $641 million federal COVID relief money. The grant, approved by the city's spending board on December 14th.
The ayes have it. The routine agenda has been adopted.
Be More Empowered says the funding will be given to Ballet After Dark to run a yoga and dance therapy program. The mayor did not abstain from voting on that grant item in December.
There should have been an immediate recusal of the mayor.
David Williams, president of the Taxpayers Protection Alliance, says this is the latest example of why the Board of Estimates needs changing to provide more oversight of the city's spending.
The checks and balances are clearly not in place in Baltimore City and on the Board of Estimates.
Meanwhile, the mayor's team tells Fox 45 News Mayor Scott had not met Pugh yet when Be More Empowered applied for the grant in June of 2022, adding, quote, Mayor Scott has always and will always uphold the highest ethical standard. The mayor's office not providing a clear explanation about why the mayor did not recuse himself from that December Board of Estimates vote. In Baltimore, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Well, the couple was at the Boost event yesterday for the Downtown Partnership's funding announcement for Black-owned businesses. Be More Empowered received funding for storefront improvements. The baby has a due date of early next year.
Residents of Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and Howard County are being asked to conserve water on a voluntary basis. It follows a fire at Cromwell Pumping Station that's in Baltimore County. DPW says that fire knocked out power to the pumping station and they're making repairs. DPW is asking residents to cut back on the amount of water they use to avoid putting stress on the system while the fix is being made. It is important to note that the water is safe and the request to restrict water doesn't include drinking, cooking, or cleaning. It's unclear when the advisory will be lifted.
Vice President Kamala Harris making her way to Coppin State University today. Harris, alongside Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen, announced a $20 billion clean energy loan program that will help nonprofits and disadvantaged communities create clean energy projects in their neighborhoods.
We got to make up for some lost time. So by dramatically accelerating our work, we know we can lower emissions. And we will do that by providing $20 billion to a national network of nonprofits, community lenders, and other financial institutions to fund tens of thousands of climate and clean energy projects across America.
Well, Harris says that lowering fossil fuel emissions will not only benefit the environment, she says Americans' health will also improve.
Despite months of fighting, thousands of Howard County families and students won't be getting their school buses back before the start of the new year. Transportation was the focus of Thursday night's Howard County Board of Education meeting. The board spent about half of its 5-hour meeting talking about changes to transportation. 3,500 students are losing school bus service. For months, parents and community members have complained their kids aren't safe, especially young ones walking nearly a mile to school.
In short, this county has identified that it's not a safe walking route due to the speeding and sight restrictions, and yet the public school system wants our 5-year-olds to walk that route. It's simply irresponsible. I've emailed the transportation office 5 different times beginning on May 2nd, and our route has still not been assessed. The only responses from the office are canned replies without substance.
Well, in the end, board members opted for the superintendent to monitor transportation for the next 60 days, or the first 60 days of the school year, to see what's working and what's not.
Coming up, a serial killer caught after going on the run for more than a decade. The connection between his victims and how a trash can ultimately led to his capture.
Accessing your data without a search warrant, why the long-standing FBI practice is being challenged by Congress.
After a little bit of rain earlier tonight, we're getting ready for more rain and storms over the weekend and into next week. Tomorrow, we're looking at mostly cloudy skies and the chance for a few spotty storms for the afternoon, but we've got more rain on Sunday and again on Monday. I'll break down the timing of the storms and just how hot it gets in my Weather Authority forecast.
We're taking a look now at the Fox box. The top left, the U.S. had its deadliest 6-month stretch since at least 2006. Data from January to June shows there were 28 mass shootings across the country and 140 people died.
On the top right, new public financial documents reveal what former President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump earned during public speaking appearances. Donald Trump made $2.5 million for one appearance in 2021. Melania has made more than $1 million total.
Bottom left, several senior officers in the Russian army have been detained after a failed mutiny last month. One of those is the head of Russia's aerospace forces. 13 others are in custody right now.
On the bottom right, a man is accused of killing 11 people on Long Island more than a decade ago. Many of the victims were young women employed as sex workers. An attorney for the victim's family says this is a first step toward closure.
This is a great, bittersweet victory after all these years of struggle to find the true killers. Here's one of them. And there's other evidence we have, possibly with respect to this man, that we're going to present to the district attorney in due course.
Police say they pulled the suspect's DNA from pizza crust thrown out in a Manhattan trash can. Be sure to sign up for News on the Go. Go to foxbaltimore.com and click on Mobile Alert Sign Up under the Station tab. You can also download the Fox 45 app for your smartphone. Just search for WBFF in your app store.
Ahead at 10:30, Fox 45 News is demanding answers for the family of the late Elijah Cummings, why they're involved in a back and forth with the Baltimore cemetery over a headstone.
New information on the suspect accused of killing a 17-year-old in Towson this year, where he worked at the time, and questions over why he was employed while facing criminal charges.
More than 800,000 people are about to see their student debt forgiven. I'm Atrell Nashar. Coming up, who this will impact.
We are following three big stories at 10:30. Key testimony in the trial of a man accused of killing his pregnant girlfriend, what the suspect's brother had to say in court.
A Baltimore family is voicing frustration over a tombstone for the matriarch of their family. They say it never arrived, why the cemetery's response is prompting more pushback.
And new developments following a teen's murder in Towson this February, what we're learning about the suspected gunman.
Let's begin there. We now know why that gunman wasn't seen fleeing the area.
Fox 45 News also pressed his employer on what they knew about the suspect before hiring him. Vincent Hill explains.
Baltimore County Police say just outside that brown door, that surveillance camera captured a muzzle flash that led them to the man they say shot and killed Trayshawn Harmon.
Charging documents detailed the February 20th murder of 17-year-old Trayshawn Harmon in Towson.
GSW for 2 East Chapel Road, East Chapel off for Delaware and Lake Valley.
Baltimore County Police say 19-year-old Freedom Brown was working at the BJ's, taking out the trash in the back of the restaurant when he got into an argument with Harmon and another person.
Someone just got laid in the street near BJ's.
Several minutes later, Harmon and the friend returned to the back of BJ's. Then, a muzzle flash is captured on this security camera. Brown is then seen on the interior cameras walking back into work.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Dawn DeMalero, who works in the area and sometimes goes to BJ's. Stunned, Brown allegedly shot someone. then moved on as if nothing happened.
You've killed a person, and now you just go back to work. Same old, same old.
Paul Carter also works in the area and wonders how an accused killer passed a background check.
I'm interested in how that would actually be caught, because nobody's saying on their resume, I've killed somebody, unless you're a sniper or underworld hitman. Just 6 days before Baltimore County Police say Brown shot and killed Harmon, Baltimore City Police issued a warrant on Brown for a 2021 murder. Fox 45 sent the following questions to BJ's corporate office. What type of background checks are done on employees? What position did Brown have with the company? And how long was Brown employed there? We have not yet heard back.
A bond hearing that was scheduled for today is now rescheduled for Monday at 1 o'clock. Brown will be represented by a public defender. For now, he remains in jail in the Baltimore City Detention Center. In Towson, Vincent Hill, Fox 45 News.
Well, there are new developments in the murder trial of Michael Robertson. He's accused of killing his pregnant girlfriend, Akia Eggleston, in 2017. 4 witnesses testified today, including Robertson's brother. He says Michael was at his house on the day investigators last saw or heard from Akia Eggleston. We also heard from a former co-worker who says he saw Robertson on the day Eggleston went missing. The co-worker says Robinson seemed more concerned about losing his job than losing Akia.
That just showed that he had no care for Akia at any point in whatever relationship they had. We already talked about the day Akia was at the bank. So now we're talking about the whereabouts of Mr. Robertson. So it seems like there's a roadmap for the prosecution that they're just going to follow. And it's slow and deliberate for a reason.
Well, one of the state's witnesses is yet to show up in court. The person is a friend of Akia Eggleston. Her family voiced frustration over the witness not appearing in court, saying the testimony may bring closure.
She paid for it. We paid for it. Just give her what she paid for.
The emotional account of a grieving woman at her mother's gravesite, saying the family is still waiting for a missing headstone to arrive. In a story you'll see first on Fox, Amy Simpson speaks to the family as they've been demanding answers for more than a year.
Among the loved ones buried at Lorraine Park Cemetery is the late Dorothy Cummings.
She was a single mom of 4 girls.
Cummings lived well into her 70s and passed January 3rd, 2022. And while death and funerals often bring closure, still no closure for this family.
It's been a year and a half, and I call and I keep calling.
As Dorothy's youngest daughter says they've been unable to get answers about the headstone that's supposed to mark this final resting place.
We're not looking for anything from this other than what should be there. She's there. We want to know that she's there.
According to this daughter, Cummings planned and paid for her own end-of-life arrangements, picking out a plot at Lorraine Park years ago. This mock-up showing the headstone that's now MIA, which they say cost more than $2,000. Family claims cemetery staff haven't explained the delay, also accusing Lorraine Park Cemetery of dodging their phone calls.
I can see if we didn't pay for it, and if we hadn't paid for it, I'm sure you would have been calling us if you produced a product that we hadn't paid for.
Turns out Miss Cummings, also a first cousin to the late Congressman Elijah Cummings.
It should not take for us to name drop and for me to say, you know, Elijah Cummings is my cousin and my mom's first. It shouldn't take all of that. It should just be a consumer paying their money to get what it is that they paid for.
At her gravesite today,
I would venture to say here, like right here. She would be right here, somewhere in here, in this area. This is it.
This daughter with no choice but to guess which unmarked plot holds her mother's remains. Getting emotional.
If we could fix it and move her somewhere, it's another story.
Anxious for the whole family to finally be at peace.
And all we want is what we paid for. What she paid for. She paid for that. You know, she left enough money to cover her headstone.
Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
Well, a cemetery employee told Amy that Miss Cummings' headstone was delivered to the wrong cemetery a month ago. They were unable to give specifics about when it will arrive at Lorraine Park. Meanwhile, the family says they were never notified.
The trial for the 15-year-old Squeegee kid accused of killing Timothy Reynolds begins Monday. Police say Reynolds got out of his car near the Inner Harbor and threatened the Squeegee kid with a bat before he was shot. Last week, Reynolds' family marked 1 year since his death. They say city leaders should have done more to address squeegee issues before Reynolds was killed.
This didn't have to happen. There were no preventative measures done, and then that lack of preventative measures turned into the biggest tragedy of our lives.
Defense attorneys for the teen accused of killing Reynolds argue the shooting was in self-defense after Reynolds charged him with a bat.
Fox 45 News will have live updates from the courthouse throughout next week. We also have extensive coverage on the squeegee issues and response in Baltimore. You can view all of our reporting right now at foxbaltimore.com.
2 weeks after the Supreme Court struck down President Biden's student loan plan, his administration announces another plan to wipe out $39 billion in debt.
National correspondent Atra El-Nashar takes a closer look at how this will work.
Fixing a broken student loan repayment system, the White House announced Friday, means more than 804,000 people will see their federal loans forgiven. That system is the Department of Education's income-driven repayment plan that's meant to deliver forgiveness after 20 to 25 years of payments.
But because of problems with the program, these borrowers have not been getting the relief that they've earned.
The White House says often a loan servicer would allow a borrower to pause payments for a period of time, but didn't count that pause time toward the 20 to 25-year timeline toward forgiveness under their income-driven repayment plan.
We believe for many borrowers, they will see their debts go to zero.
The nonprofit Student Borrower Protection Center, which advocates for debt relief, applauds the move, saying in a statement, quote, "But make no mistake, over 804,000 people are receiving relief with this action because of 804,000 failures, and this is only the tip of the iceberg," calling for the administration to continue efforts to forgive loans for more borrowers.
Department of Education.
Michael Brickman, an adjunct fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, who worked for the Department of Education under former President Trump, says it's another example of what he calls the current administration's piecemeal approach to student debt forgiveness.
It's unclear if anybody will have the ability to sue them, but I think it's yet another example of the Biden administration looking for any opportunity to forgive loans, regardless of if they have congressional authority to do so.
He argues Friday's announcement has the same moral flaws as the program that was struck down by the Supreme Court.
Taxpayers, many of whom did not actually go to college, will bear the burden of this at some point.
And, he says, doesn't address the core issue of college unaffordability.
The White House tells me they believe they are getting to that core issue by expanding Pell Grants and through a new repayment system launching later this summer that cuts minimum monthly payments in half. In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar.
That brings us to our national question of the day. Do you agree with President Biden's plan to use your tax dollars to forgive student loans? You can scan the QR code on your screen right now to weigh in. Still ahead, how secure is your personal data? Why remote working is launching a powerful threat for hackers everywhere.
And we're keeping track of a few showers and storms in southern Maryland, but for the rest of us, still nice and dry. I'll let you know when to expect the next chance for rain and storms this weekend coming up in my full forecast.